You're listening to Signals from the Core, a podcast about adventuring in the core sector of the Mongoose Traveler 2nd Edition role-playing game. This is where the bureaucracy is dangerous, the nobles are lethal, and where power, paranoia, and prestige collide. I'm Captain Aurelius. I'll be your host. In each episode, we explore the tangled heart of the Third Imperium through original story hooks, people of interest, encounters, locations, and the tools you need to bring high-stakes, low-trust campaigns to life. If your crew is headed for the throne world, buckle up, because here in the core, secrets don't stay buried. Not for long. Hey everyone. I wanted to start off the episode today by saying a very big thank you for all the kind words of encouragement I've received about the podcast since the first episode. It really means a lot to me, and I'm blown away by the reception, and I hope I continue to live up to the expectations people have for the show. I've also had a lot of people ask me about the adventure seed in the last episode and whether I could make it available as a PDF for download. And I'm happy to say the answer is yes, absolutely. You can get it now. I've made it available on a Google Drive, which you can get by going to bit.ly/thelastgrant. That's bit.ly /the last grant, all one word. bit.ly/thelastgrant, all one word, no spaces. I also wanted to encourage anyone who has thoughts, ideas, questions, or comments to reach out to me via email. You can email me at coresignalsmail@gmail.com. That's coresignalsmail, no spaces again, @gmail.com. Today's episode is actually the first of a two-parter looking at gameplay in the core. This one will be focused on player characters, backgrounds, characteristics, skills, and general thoughts about how travelers you make in the core differ from the archetypes you might play in other regions of charted space, like the Spinward Marches, for instance. Then I'll provide a patron profile you can use in your games, along with a number of job hooks that the patron might provide if you're interested in playing those. Then in our next episode, we'll focus on actually running and playing in games and campaigns set in the core with referee and player tips for how to approach this setting differently. That episode will also come with my second adventure seed. So with that, let's get on with the show. The core sector isn't a frontier. Here, power wears a smile, danger arrives by invitation, and survival comes down to knowing the right name to drop at the right time. In a core sector campaign, where the drama is slow burn, the stakes are political, and the dangers are polite but lethal, travelers are more than just explorers, freelancers, or traders. They're operators, navigators of systems, survivors of protocol, people with just enough influence to matter, but not enough to be untouchable. Those who thrive here aren't always the most powerful, but they've brushed up against power and walked away intact. They know when to act, when to vanish, and when to let someone else take the fall. When you're creating a character for core play, certain careers from the Traveler Core rulebook lend themselves naturally to these roles. In this episode of Signals from the Core, we'll explore the backgrounds, skills, and characteristics best suited for adventures set in the heart of the Third Imperium, along with practical tips for both referees and players to bring core sector intrigue to life at the table. So what kind of travelers belong in the core? The core sector runs on etiquette, access, and plausible deniability. Doors open for those who know which desk to visit, which name to whisper, and which rumor to float or ignore. Our travelers here aren't your typical adventurers. In the core, they're operators, born from specific careers and assignments that shape what they can get away with. So what roles and backgrounds might be best when playing in a core setting? Well, there are Imperial bureaucrats. These come from backgrounds like agents in law enforcement or corporate security, citizens in corporate administration, or nobles in administrative posts. Or they could be Navy, Army, or Marine support staff. In play, they weaponize process, quote-unquote routine audits that take a turn, a lost docket that suddenly resurfaces with a new signature. They grease the party's path through red tape, or strand a rival behind permits, forms, and a missing authorization code. They know which forms to fake, which doors to knock on, and which ones never to open. Paperwork is their battlefield. We have nobles themselves, disgraced or ambitious. These are nobles as diplomats, administrators, or dilettantes. Perhaps more than anywhere else in Traveller, the core is a perfect opportunity if you've ever wanted to play a noble. The core's noble game is quiet knives and loud galas. A dilettante swans through velvet ropes, gathering whispers. A diplomat smiles through a treaty they intend to sabotage later. An administrator counts votes nobody knows are being counted. They know the rules of the noble game and what it costs to bend or break them. We have retired military officers or veterans. Army and Marine officers retired into advisory roles. Navy commanders shuffled into quote-unquote honorary staff posts. Veterans drifting into private security, bodyguard work, or mercenary contracts in the Corps' quieter corridors. They bring the discipline, instincts, and scars of service into the theater where power plays out in polished salons instead of battlefields. They're the muscle at a noble's side, the quietly intimidating aide, or the veteran who recognizes a covert operation for what it is before anyone else does. Their presence alone changes the stakes. Every conversation carries the unspoken reminder that they've survived worse than this. The core may run on etiquette, but behind every smile is the threat of force. Retired officers and veterans know when to show steel and when to stand silent and when to act decisively. They anchor parties in danger, and their reputations make them useful as both protectors and enforcers in a world where subtlety rules. Until it doesn't. There are scholars, archivists in prestigious imperial research institutions, field researchers cataloging relics or mapping politically sensitive regions, professors serving elite institutions tied to noble houses and ministries. They could hold the keys to knowledge others want hidden or controlled. Ancient data caches, prototype technologies, or historical truths that could embarrass a dynasty. Their careers may seem public, but their most consequential work is often classified or politically explosive. In the core, knowledge is currency, and scholars mint it daily. Whether they guard it, sell it, or leak it, their discoveries can shake the Imperium's most stable foundations. There are agents. Agents cut loose after failed operations. Intelligence officers retired too early. Scouts reassigned after quiet scandals. They live in the aftermath of secrets. Burned operatives drifting through the core. They carry coded knowledge, dead drop habits, and the lingering paranoia of assets who know too much. At the table, they're the ones who recognize surveillance sweeps, spot the fake security clearance, or know exactly how long a camera feed can be looped. They slip through restricted corridors as if muscle memory guides them. And sometimes it does. The core sector thrives on information warfare. Agents embody it. They're both asset and liability, trusted for their experience but never quite believed. For referees, they're perfect vehicles for paranoia and double crosses. For players, they're ready-made figures who can either stabilize a party or pull it deeper into the shadows of imperial intrigue. There are psionic exiles. If you've ever wanted to play a Traveller game on the run or constantly looking over your shoulder, playing a scion in the core is your perfect opportunity. These are wild talents exposed during routine screenings, psi warriors abandoned after covert assignments, scholars whose experiments edged into forbidden disciplines, or just citizens whose gifts were revealed at the wrong time in the wrong place. They're fugitives by birthright, carrying powers the Imperium declares illegal. Every polite dinner or velvet-roped gala in the core could be their last if someone senses too much. They're allies who can hear what shouldn't be spoken, manipulate thoughts beneath the surface, or push minds just enough to tip a negotiation. But each use of power risks discovery, denunciation, and a one-way trip to a psi-suppressing cell. The core sector is where the walls close in fastest on psions. It's the stage for stories of survival, secrecy, and betrayal. As exiles, psionic travelers heighten the tension of core play. Every choice is a gamble between survival and exposure. For referees, they're tools to show the Imperium's deep fear of psionics. For players, they're a constant test of restraint, daring, and the price of power. We have fixers, couriers, and underworld functionaries. These are rogues as thieves or enforcers, drifters as wanderers or scavengers, merchants working as brokers. They move packages, people, and problems. Port bosses know them by nickname. Nobles, stewards know them by burner ID. They spend favors like currency and IOUs like weapons. The core's underbelly needs operators, and these are the deniable assets, usable and expendable. There are journalists and media operatives, documentarians, writers, investigative reporters, rogues with a nose for danger, admins in state-aligned Ministry of Information roles. Their work can detonate alliances or vanish under pending legal review. Some sell silence, some mortgage their careers on a single broadcast. Either way, the core watches them back. Journalists in the core, while always chasing a story, an angle, or a scandal, also must navigate censorship, access, and the ethics of exposure. Then we have citizens and industry specialists. These are corporate professionals, technicians, union stewards, colonists from core-funded resettlement projects. They hold the real levers: supply lines, schedules, maintenance windows. You won't see them in the court circulars until a system nobody understands stops working and the sector calls them by their first names. They keep the core's machinery running and can stop it just as easily. We have drifters and port rats. These are wanderers, scavengers, and cross-career station dwellers. They're the real streetwise element of the core. They read the underdecks like a diary, which corridor cameras are decorative, which ramp crew sleeps through which shift. When a sealed concourse door opens, they know which vent opens next. They can vanish into the station's rhythm and reappear exactly where they're needed. The core sector comes with a lot of opportunity for urban settings, and having a streetwise port rat on your crew can pay dividends. Then there are ex-cons, former inmates, street enforcers, and syndicate fixers released back into Imperial society, never quite free of the debts and reputations earned behind bars. They're the ones nobles, junior executives, and bureaucrats call when they need something done off the books. They can go places respectable people can't be seen. But a parole officer might appear at the worst possible times. Old yard favors resurface as dangerous obligations, and their contacts in the underworld become leverage for or against the party. The core sector is all about who can be seen and where. Ex-cons can go where their patrons cannot. They carry grudges and obligations into the glittering halls of power, giving referees ready-made complications and players the chance to be both tool and threat in the same scene. The core rewards people who can play a part. Assignments define those parts: diplomat or dilettante, courier or ex-con, lawyer, admin, reporter, spy. Your background is your backstage pass, and sometimes your exit strategy. If you're building a player for the core, start by asking, which room do I walk into without an invitation? And which one do I avoid? Your assignment can give you the answer. In the fringes of the Imperium, in the Spinward Marches, A sharp blade and a faster trigger can take you far. But in the core sector, the weapons that matter most are your wits, your charm, and your ability to read the room before you even step into it. If you're rolling a character for core play, every career choice becomes a toolkit for survival. The skills, connections, and reputation your traveler brings to the table will shape how they navigate the Imperium's most dangerous halls of power. So let's talk about the characteristics and skills that let a traveler pull their weight in polite but lethal company. If you're anything like me, before playing in the core, social was a dump stat. But here, it's probably paramount. The core runs on hierarchy, and a high soch opens doors that no bribe or bluff ever could. It's the primary attribute for access, recognition, and influence. Even if you never set foot in the noble gallery, people will watch how others treat you. A high soch traveler can get into rooms where the deals really happen, without even being invited. In the core, it often means the difference between just being noticed and getting deferred to. Intellect. The difference between just reading the brief and reading between the lines is intellect. It's the primary attribute for investigative play in the core, where every report, memo, or whispered rumor may conceal a deeper truth. INT lets travelers parse complexity, anticipate hidden motives, and spot the trap buried inside a polished report, turning information into survival. EDU, education, clearances, credentials, and coded citations all hinge on EDU. It's the primary attribute for navigating imperial bureaucracy and institutional power. A high education traveler knows which form is correct, which statute applies, and, more importantly, when to feign ignorance. Education is what lets a character turn red tape into either a barrier or a weapon. And then there's Dex. Dexterity is the attribute for subtle action. The core may not be a war zone, but sometimes the most dangerous moment is handing over a drink without spilling it, or slipping a data chip across a table without notice. Dex shines in social sleight of hand, and can often mean the difference between a quiet success and a public disaster. In core play, the skill list reads differently than it does on the frontier. Here, some previously thought minor skills could become decisive. So let's look at some of the skills that you may have previously overlooked in some of your traveler campaigns. There's admin, the signature skill of the core. It's the key to moving things through or around the system. In the right hands, a stamped form can be more lethal than a blade. Advocate, your shield and your sword in the courtroom and the council chamber. It lets you argue cases, cite precedents, and quietly spot the legal traps others might miss. There's art, for crafting persuasive media, spotting forged masterpieces and counterfeit works, and producing the kind of compelling content that shifts public sentiment. When you need to authenticate that priceless painting or create a video that changes minds. Diplomat, for smoothing frayed tempers, reading political weather, and keeping talks alive until your allies arrive. Broker, not just about money, this is the language of trades, concessions, and leverage. Then there are skills that lead to perception and investigation, like investigate. You'll spend more time digging through data, records, and whispers than you will in firefights. This skill finds the lead before your rival does. Recon. Core recon isn't just military, it's spotting security sweeps, hidden cameras, and who's watching you from the balcony. Streetwise. For me, this one's universal, but every city has its unofficial rules, and this is all about knowing them before they learn about you. Then there's electronics. This one might be obvious, but comms, computers, sensors, Because sometimes the truth isn't in the room, it's buried in the network. Then there's persuade, your go-to for winning hearts in the open. I mean, persuade's probably obvious. Deception, your shield when you're not telling the truth, because in the core, you rarely do. And then let's face it, you're going to need carouse when you're playing in the core. It's less about parties and more about blending in without looking like you're blending in. You know what I mean? Then pilot, but small craft. A noble's yacht, a ministry shuttle, or news drone. It's not always a warship or the scout courier. It's about getting in where you need to without making a scene. Then there's drive. Like I said, we're going to be playing a lot in urban settings. And when you need the quickest way out of a situation, it's not going to be a jump point. It's going to be around that congested street corner. And then, obviously, stealth. The most dangerous people in the core are the ones no one remembers seeing. And you're going to want that to be you. We'll take deeper dives into these skills in coming episodes, but I just kind of wanted to give an overview, a flavor of the sort of skills beyond gun combat and athletics and some of those more adventurous skills that some of us have always typically gravitated toward in more traditional traveler play. Now let's take a look at some of the builds and combinations that I feel like shine in the core. These are just some thought starters about a kind of potential traveler you might think about for yourself. They're meant as ideas, not absolutes, obviously. And they're just, like I said, a starting point. We'll explore these more deeply over the coming episodes. But I think I call one of these the policy knife, right? This is a high EDU player with admin, advocate, and diplomat. They're kind of a civil service or noble in administrator careers. They excel at creating or dismantling bureaucratic obstacles. Then there's the velvet ghosts. These are high intellect with stealth, recon, deception. These could be rogues, like with the thief background or assignment, or agents with intelligence assignment backgrounds. They're perfect for blending in like wallpaper until it's too late. And then they're on you. You pounce. Then there are the social anchors. High soc. They've got carouse, persuade, broker. These are like nobles with the dilettante, the dilettante assignment, or merchant with broker assignments. These keep the party in the room when they actually had no business entering in the first place. Then there's the quiet lens. These are high EDU characters with investigate electronics and sensors or comms, especially comms, streetwise, scholar, maybe with the scientist assignment, or entertainer with the journalist assignment, right? I mean, for me, that one's a big one. I don't know. I'm really attracted to that idea. These are players who kind of find and control narrative for your party. Then there are the double-booked attaché, I call them. They're balanced in both social and intellect. They've got admin, persuade, but mixed with a little bit of stealth. Maybe these come from citizen in corporate backgrounds or diplomat with envoy backgrounds. They manage the schedules for two masters who must never meet. They're kind of playing both sides, right? They've got one foot maybe still in the bureaucracy, but obviously they're a traveler. So they're getting into the mischief that we all know our travelers love to get into. Because the core sector doesn't always reward the loudest gun or the fastest ship, right? It rewards the traveler who can stand in a crowded hall, smile at their enemy, and leave with 3 new allies and a file before nobody even knew they existed. If I could give you a tip, it's build for subtlety, build for patience, build for the day you'll need to be remembered by the right person at the right time. So we've talked about the types of travelers who thrive in the core. The operators, the fixers, the quiet clerks inside the ministry filing room. But characters are only half the equation. The core doesn't just test their skills, it tests the referee's hand. This is a place where plots breathe, where every handshake could hide a ledger, and where the loudest explosion might be the clause in subparagraph 6. To make the core come alive, you'll need to treat the setting itself as a player, with its own motives, moods, and moves. We're going to get into a patron profile and some job hooks from him in our next segment. But in our next episode, we'll pick up with part 2 on tips for playing in the core and running it as its own kind of thing, as its own character. So I hope you'll enjoy that, and stay tuned for our next segment. Next up, we have a patron profile for Baron Laird Tenpenny. He's the Baron of Sirma in Perite, 1609 core. His affiliations are with the Helior Materials Group. He's a member of the Moot as a junior peer, and he has affiliations with select bureaucratic ministries. He's 52 years old, and his homeworld is Sirma. C42498A-C. It's HIHTIN. High tech, high population, and industrial. He has a key asset, which is Shanama, APG 0104 in core, E551112-7, low population and poor. Baron Laird Tenpenny is a minor core noble with a major ambition problem. Born into a respected administrative lineage on Sirma, Tenpenny lacks the naval heritage or merchant dynasty credentials of his noble peers. Instead, he cultivated influence in the gaps, the favors, friendships, and fragile narratives that grease the inner workings of the core. Tenpenny styles himself a patron of commerce and culture. In truth, he's an opportunist who traffics in rumor, deniable transactions, and artfully engineered proximity to power. While Sirma provides the prestige, his real leverage comes from his exclusive rights over Shanama, a backwater world wrapped in golden speculation. Shanama itself is little more than a small, desolate world. Thin atmosphere, shallow aquifers, and a population of only a few hundred contract workers. The only reason it still hosts an imperial settlement is because of Helior Materials Group, or HMG, a rising sector-spanning resource corporation which is now headquartered on Sirma. Decades ago, Imperial Scout surveys detected anomalous mineral readings beneath Shanama's crust, possible concentration of xenocrystic iridium lanthide nodules, rare earth deposits essential to jump drive confinement systems. For years, prospectors came and went, leasing rights from Tenpenny for short-term digs that yielded nothing, but kept his coffers well padded. Eventually, Tenpenny used his connections in the Ministry of Colonization and the Interior to broker a long-term charter with Helior, based not just on resource leases, but on a strategic integration of Shanama's mineral rights into Helior's long-term development roadmap. This behind-the-scenes facilitation positioned Tenpenny as the essential gatekeeper to the Shanama operation. The agreement also ended the petty leases that he was up to in the past, but ensured that royalty payments flowed to him directly, more lucrative and reliable than his penny-ante schemes of the past. Helior maintains the colony today as a long-shot gamble, convinced there's wealth buried kilometers deep beneath the surface of Shanama. If ever recovered, These nodules would provide a resource so valuable it could transform the fortunes of any corporation or noble who controlled it. Deposits of this kind are vanishingly rare across charted space, most having been exhausted centuries ago, which only adds to the allure. A mother lode on Shanama would make Helior Materials Group and Tenpenny staggeringly wealthy. Yet, despite decades of drilling and surveys, no such mother lode has ever been located. Only the faintest traces of the metals have been found, just enough to keep the hope alive, along with the dream of unimaginable wealth. As the promise of Shanama endured, so did Tenpenny's ticket into core politics. 12 years ago, the confluence of planetary influence and speculative wealth reached a tipping point. A recommendation from the Duke Dagalu Kinlusha Rikumi of Parit, who I've just butchered his name, my apologies, in the Parit subsector, backed by ministries eager to secure noble representation on the rising industrial worlds, prompted the emperor to issue a formal patent of nobility and letter of enfeoffment. Tenpenny was granted the landed title of Baron of Surma, an appointment justified by both his strategic holdings and his native ties to the planet's bureaucratic elite. He's not cruel, not reckless, and not overtly criminal. Just close. Baron Tenpenny's ambition is simple enough to state, though endlessly complex in its pursuit: wealth and upward mobility within the twisting labyrinth of the moot. He is convinced that small fortunes, quietly won and carefully hidden, can be parlayed into visible investments that secure the kind of lasting prestige no one can question. To him, rumor and possibility are just as powerful as tangible riches, provided they are played with confidence. In person, Tenpenny cuts a distinctive figure. His build is slightly soft around the edges, a man clearly more at home in banquet halls than back alleys. He favors tailored core fashions, conservative in cut, but always accented with elegant eccentricities. A jeweled cravat pin here, a ceremonial cuff there, that remind onlookers he's not merely another face in the crowd. His demeanor is breezy and ingratiating. Every smile a little too polished, every word just shy of sincerity. Tenpenny's private amusements betray his outlook. He collects antique ledgers, obsolete bureaucratic seals, and quote-unquote authentic paperwork of dubious provenance. He surrounds himself with the trappings of imperial legitimacy. More than once, he's dressed his dealings in this pomp, pressing an ancient-looking seal into wax, as if to suggest his petty schemes carry the full weight of tradition. For Tenpenny, appearance is half the game. The other half is convincing others to believe in the promise of what might be. In the moot, Tenpenny is tolerated, a sideshow noble with an inconvenient knack for turning trivia into leverage. Many privately mock his Shanama holdings, but none deny the value of access to exotic rare earths if the rumors ever prove true. That what if keeps him invited to salons and subcommittees. On Surma, his estates are modest, but his influence grows. The relocation of Helior's HQ from Nimulin has given him more pull with logistics officials and corporate networks than many of his higher-ranking peers. He's also widely respected by port officials and mid-tier bureaucrats for his ability to make things, quote-unquote, move quietly. On Shanama, he's an absentee figurehead, seen as a distant aristocrat who signed away oversight of everything, but still occasionally shows up for photo ops and legacy-building speeches. Now we'll look at some patron job hooks from Baron Laird Tenpenny. He always has a number of unsavory errands in need of deniable agents. He dresses them in polite language, but each further his ambitions, protecting his precarious standing, feeding his coffers, or reinforcing the promise of Shanama. His job offerings to the travelers are frequently accompanied by reassurances that sound something like, "It's nothing criminal. Well, mildly criminal, some might say, but not altogether treasonous, I assure you. Just a bit too far to the unsavory side of things for me to want to be officially connected, I'm sure you understand." I've put together 6 job hooks from Baron Tenpenny. Each one gives the travelers a chance to make money, build connections, or just as easily burn a bridge and make an enemy they'll probably end up regretting. With every job completed, the rewards grow, and Tenpenny sweetens the deal by opening doors to bigger opportunities. Of course, these introductions aren't charity. He's making sure the travelers are tied into networks he can use to his own advantage down the line. The Silent Survey of Shanama. Helior Materials Group has ordered another round of site surveys and mineral testing on Shanama. Tenpenny wants the travelers to escort a geologist of his choosing and make sure the final report reflects his interests before it ever reaches Surma. The reward is 1d6 times 1,000 credits each, plus a token share in Shanama's speculative mineral rights, which has only a paper value. Complication: the survey uncovers something real, an unstable deposit that could collapse the colony if exploited. A twist is that the geologist approaches the travelers in secret, offering them double to report the truth instead of Tenpenny's version. Then we have the Stolen Ledger. A financial ledger tied to one of Tenpenny's rivals has surfaced in the bazaars beneath Capital. It contains damning records and is already attracting dangerous attention. Tenpenny wants it retrieved before it can be examined too closely. The reward is 5,000 credits each, plus an introduction to a mid-level Ministry of Justice functionary who can quietly expedite permits, overlook filings, or nudge paperwork in the right into the right hands, if need be. A complication is the ledger is also being hunted by an Imperial auditor pursuing a larger embezzlement case. The twist is Tenpenny's name appears in the book as well, and his true intent is to destroy it before anyone sees it. The Discreet Shipment. A sealed crate of supposed quote-unquote rare vintages is awaiting pickup on Apogee. Tenpenny needs it delivered without attracting notice, as customs officials have grown a little too inquisitive about this one. The reward is 8,000 credits each, plus a favor redeemable with an influential core sector broker. The complication is, the shipment actually contains contraband biocultures under Ministry of Science embargo. The twist is, the job is a sting, arranged by a rival noble, Count Darius Andaris of Nimluine, to catch Tenpenny in a compromising crime as revenge for poaching Helior's HQ to Surma. The Missing Clerk. One of Tenpenny's own clerks has vanished with sensitive documents. The travelers are tasked with locating the fugitive before someone else does, and recovering the papers at any cost. The reward is $10,000 each if they return with the papers and the clerk alive, or 5,000 credits each if only the documents return. The complication is the clerk is hiding on Capital under the protection of a journalist investigating Tenpenny's dealings. The twist is the clerk is not only a traitor, but he's stumbled onto evidence tying Tenpenny to a ministry scandal, and he may ask the travelers for help in blackmailing Tenpenny instead of retrieving the documents for him. The Gallery Favor. A piece of art with questionable provenance is scheduled for auction on Capital. The piece itself is unimportant. What matters are the documents hidden within it. Tenpenny wants the travelers to ensure he secures it without a public fuss. He's offering 10,000 credits apiece, plus an introduction to a core noble patron who can open the right doors at select gatherings. The complication is, the art is in fact a stolen Imperial archive artifact, and agents from the Imperial Security and Intelligence Bureau are watching the auction closely. The twist is that the art is the important prize after all, and the set of courier codes hidden inside the frame are a plant by the ISIB to trace anyone who activates them. The Broker's Gambit. A lucrative trade concession on Mishar, a planet with a reputation for ruthless oversight and industrial secrecy, is about to be awarded, and Tenpenny wants the travelers to influence the outcome, delaying rivals, redirecting documents, and intercepting meetings. The reward is 12,000 credits each, plus an official letter of introduction from Tenpenny to a prominent core merchant house. The complication is, the rival broker's application is quietly supported by Mishar's Directorate of Continuance, whose internal watchdogs are trained to root out even implied subversion. The twist is, Tenpenny has already placed a false dossier in the system. He wants the travelers to trigger an investigation, not to stop the concession, but to entangle the rival and feed whispers of procedural misconduct that he can later exploit. Typically shadowing the Baron at all times is Joran Krail, Tenpenny's fixer. Where Baron Tenpenny is velvet and charm, Joran Krail is the knife in the pocket. Efficient, discreet, and pragmatic, Krail handles many of the day-to-day errands the Baron cannot risk being linked to. He's Tenpenny's real operator, arranging bribes, shadowing rivals, forging the right papers, and quietly pushing obstacles out of the way. Krail was once an aide in the Ministry of Treasury, part of the Procurement Oversight Bureau. He lost his position after being implicated in a scandal over inflated contracts for starport maintenance, a case in which he was more a scapegoat than a mastermind. Dismissed quietly, but with a tarnished record, he was rescued by Tenpenny, who saw him as a useful combination of bureaucratic know-how and willingness to get his hands dirty. In play, Joran Krail gives referees a way to put a sharper edge on Tenpenny's patronage. He can be the one who delivers the briefings or handles negotiations, and sometimes makes the players feel like they're dealing with a professional operator instead of a pompous dilettante. If Tenpenny is the velvet glove, Krail is the iron hand beneath it. I expect we'll be hearing more about Baron Tenpenny, Joran Krail, Count Indaris of Nimluine, and all sorts of other ideas I have for the way I'm approaching my take on the core sector. I'm happy to have you along for the ride, and I hope you'll bear with me as I continue to butcher pronunciations of some of these names and planets. Villani isn't my first language, after all. All right, folks. That's all for this episode of Signals from the Core. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check out part 2 of this gameplay in the core episode next time, when we look at referee and player tips for how to approach this setting differently, plus my second adventure seed, the Black Census, next time. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform, wherever you listen to the show, and share with your fellow travelers. It really helps a lot. You wouldn't believe how much a review or even just rating the episodes helps. You have questions, comments, or want to submit an idea for future episodes? You can reach out at coresignalsmail@gmail.com. Until next time, keep your clearance valid, your comms encrypted, and your grav line out of committee oversight. Stay sharp, travelers.